With so much happening in our community and nation that is so divided, we must take the opportunity to look back together so that we can move forward together. Register now for Justified Anger's courses, Black History for a New Day, starting in February. The course is taught by UW-Madison professors and Black community leaders with the purpose of understanding how the African American experience has shaped the world we all live in, and how allies can find roles supporting racial justice today. Learn more at justifiedanger.com. Murder for Two, anyone? Everyone's a suspect in this multi-award-winning two-person musical comedy. One actor investigates, the other plays every suspect, and both play the piano in this whip-smart, winking homage to an old-fashioned theatrical mystery. Murder for Two runs February 21st through March 2nd at the Capital City Theater Core, located on University Avenue on Madison's west side. Get tickets at capitalcitytheater.org. Today on City Cast Madison. It's the Friday News Roundup, and this week I'm joined by City Cast Madison's Hayley Sperling and Jade Iseri-Ramos. We're getting into how Trump's immigration executive orders can impact Madison, UW-Madison's removal of its vice chancellor for diversity, equity, and inclusion over concerns of financial mismanagement, and this dang frigid weather, how intense it's been and what we can do to help those in need. Plus, possible 2025 James Beard winners in our midst. It's Friday, January 24th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Welcome to the Friday News Roundup. We've got a new president of the United States who's taking immediate actions on his political goals. Cultural clashes are afoot, and the majority of us have braved pretty frigid colds. Let's get into it. Joining me today is the leader of this here podcast, Hayley Sperling. Hi, Hayley.
Hi, Bianca.
And our producer, Jade Iseri-Ramos. Hey, Jade.
Hey, Bianca.
All right, Jade, you're kicking us off with some very unfun news, but important.
Yeah, I guess depending on who you are, right? We all, I'm sure, are aware that on Monday, which was Inauguration Day, President Trump came out and made good on several of his campaign promises. He pardoned over 1,000 January 6 rioters. He paused the TikTok ban, which technically he did that over the weekend. He withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement. He is now requiring that the U.S. government only recognizes two genders, male and female, which will be defined by whether or not a person is born with eggs or sperm. And he made major moves to the mass deportation he promised. He signed an executive order which restores an effort to deport anyone and everyone without legal status. Under Biden's administration, the criteria for deportation was much more narrow, but Trump also signed an order that allows the U.S. military to act as immigration officers, and he ended several Biden administration programs and policies that made legal immigration easier for folks. And maybe most shockingly of all, he signed an executive order titled Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizens, which ends birthright citizenship. Basically, babies born in the U.S. to two non-U.S. citizens or permanent residents would no longer be born into U.S. citizenship. Birthright is something that the Constitution protects for everyone under the 14th Amendment, which was signed into law in 1857. In Wisconsin, bringing it back home, Governor Evers and Attorney General Josh Kaul joined a coalition of 17 states and 2 cities to challenge that specific executive order.
I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm completely killed by this.
There's so much that we just fit into like the first minute of this show, right? It's a lot to unpack.
Laughing,
I mean,
not to cry.
The birthright stuff is already being challenged in court, and I imagine that so much of all of these other executive orders are going to be challenged in court. I'm still so stuck on the two genders. Like sometimes I don't feel like two genders. I'm like a mysterious third option, you know, like.
Yeah.
But this is all jokes aside, like very serious and going to have very serious repercussions. And I mean, like we're seeing this all around the country already, right? And even in Madison. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's go back to specifically the immigration executive orders and how that'll impact people here in Madison. So there are about 80,000 undocumented residents living in Wisconsin, making up about 1.4% of the population. That's according to some data from the Pew Research Center in 2022. And obviously, numbers counting undocumented people are hard to verify, and they're also often an undercount because there is precarity in identifying yourself as an undocumented resident. But these are people that really hold up our communities and hold up our industries. I think something that's thrown around a lot in Wisconsin is that there are about 10,000 undocumented workers in the dairy industry that perform about 70% of the labor on our dairy farms. But there's still 70,000 other people who are working and living in our communities that aren't dairy workers. And so I think we do a little bit of a disservice when we say this is going to tank the dairy industry, not recognizing the other parts of our day-to-day lives that will be impacted if, as Trump wants, all undocumented people are deported.
I mean, the ripple effects would be huge, right? You know, the dairy industry is just, it's iconic to Wisconsin, but that's not to say that the impacts across all of our economies would not be massive. Manufacturing and construction and agriculture and the service industries, you know, think about the people that are washing dishes in restaurants. Think about the people that are doing housekeeping in hotels. It's just like there are undocumented people that touch pretty much every part of our economy. And I don't necessarily know if people understand the sweeping implications that all of these measures will have on our society.
You're absolutely right. I think that there'll be crazy ripple effects. And I also think that what I'm concerned about is I think a lot about the increase of hate crimes that happened to Asian American folks at the beginning of the pandemic. And I worry that this will embolden people to really hate people who they perceive as undocumented, whether or not they are truly, you know, quote unquote, undocumented. Do you guys remember 2018? There was some ICE raids all across Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in the fall of 2018, there was a 4-day ICE operation that resulted in 83 people detained in Wisconsin, 20 of them right here in Dane County. And 39 of all the people who were detained had zero criminal records. They were just everyday people. Several businesses in Madison closed to prevent ICE from coming in. And I don't know if you remember, but El Dorado Grill was closed for several days because one of their cooks was detained. There were also plenty of reports that the ICE officers did not identify themselves, or they said that we're the police. And so people were opening the doors, not realizing what was at risk. So if you are someone who is undocumented or someone in your household is undocumented, one thing that you should know is that you don't have to open the door. Unless someone has a warrant signed by a judge, they cannot come in to your home. And that's protected under your Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure. You should also make sure that you have your documentation. If you have any U.S. or state-issued IDs, have those on you. And it's a good idea to scan any copies of any important papers, any visas, anything that you have a scanned copy of those in a secure location and make sure a trusted person knows where those backups are. If you're a mixed status household, make sure that the family members who are U.S. citizens have their passports and that those are up to date, and have an emergency plan. If you are not someone who is in this precarious position, maybe you can be someone else's emergency plan. Maybe you're the person who picks up kids from school should something happen, or care for elderly family members. And if you have any legal questions at all, Community Justice Inc. and Community Immigration Law Center in Madison are both really good places to secure a lawyer and talk to someone.
Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, I've already heard some restaurant workers talking about ICE agents being around, so there's word out. That's not something that I've verified, but regardless, there's been executive orders and calls for mass deportation, so I don't think that the president is just saying things. I think that they are actually going to take action, so I appreciate you, Jade, like bringing all this and what people can do to help protect people in their community.
You mentioned like restaurants. So if you are someone who works in a restaurant, maybe you manage a restaurant or you're just an employee at a restaurant, maybe you're an owner of a restaurant, know that ICE can come into your business and they can go anywhere that customers can go. But they cannot go into areas that are for employees only. So break rooms, kitchen, office, basically make sure that that line is clear and that everyone knows that our kitchen is off limits to customers, and that includes ICE. If you're an owner or a manager of a business, come up with a written plan. Make sure your employees know that plan and do a fire drill, right? Practice a drill of what if ICE comes in, what do we do? Make sure that your team knows how you're going to respond. There's a lot of resources online that can get you started with that sort of plan. And then also, if you know that ICE is coming, if you've heard it at all, you can close. Because customers aren't allowed in a closed business, which means ICE isn't allowed in a closed business. You can turn off your open sign, lock the doors, and be closed. And then that leads me to if you are a bystander, if you're just someone who is at a business or you're walking out and about and you think that you see ICE, verify it's really ICE, look for jackets, really make sure that you're sure that it's ICE, and then get documentation. So videos, pictures. If you can get the exact location, that's really important. And then get the information out. Again, Community Justice Inc. and Community Immigration Law Center in Madison are good places to get that information so they can share it with their networks. And then the media, right? Know your trusted media sources and share that with them. But I think what leads us to the last thing, which is what can Dane County or Madison do? And it's a little bit difficult. So among all those executive orders that were signed by Trump, there's also an executive order that directs the Attorney General to deny federal money to so-called sanctuary cities, basically cities that refuse to cooperate with ICE. And so there are very few cities, I think Madison included, Dane County included, that aren't coming out forthright and saying we're a sanctuary city. In 2018, Dane County and Madison were not declared sanctuary cities, but ICE did recognize Dane County as a radical place. And so we were not notified that the raids were coming. I think that can put us in a really difficult spot. In an interview last week, the interim chief, John Patterson, told the Cap Times that since that happened in 2018, they've been focusing on trying to maintain strong communication lines with both the community and federal agents that enforce immigration laws in the U.S. It's probably also a good time to note, Bianca, that you sat down with the outgoing chief, and that will be out on Monday's podcast.
Yeah. It's certainly, I'm sure, has everyone on edge, the idea that the raids in 2018, that nobody was aware of them and it just happened, So I'm glad to, having heard from the interim chief and definitely, seconding that folks should tune in to us on Monday, listen, schedule it. Our conversation with Chief Sean Barnes is a really strong one around how we're working to keep our city safe and his legacy. So definitely listen for that one for sure.
And this is sort of where I'm going to wrap it all up, but really dig into your communities, figure out how you can support people around you. And I think that the only people who protect us is us.
Thank you for bringing us all that information, Jade. That is really thoughtful and just useful to inform people what they can do and what their rights are. So thank you so much. And before we dive into any more news, let's take a quick break.
Do you plan your vacations based on whether you can speak the local language? With Babbel, language no longer has to be the barrier. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of City Cast, and I went to Mexico City a couple of years ago with my girlfriend, who's a native Spanish speaker. So I just let her do all the talking, like all of it. I adored the city, and now I'm going to go back in a couple of months, but with my college roommates, who are a bunch of middle-aged men, none of us Spanish speakers. When I was younger, I might not have been bold enough to do that, but now I'm not anxious because Babbel has me covered. Thanks to Babbel, I know how to order a taxi, how to give directions, how to order in a restaurant, all the small and useful bits of language that make international travel easier. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in a new language, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations, especially the sort you need while traveling. Food, how to get places. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when communicating. With a focus on conversation, you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. So I hope I'll see you in Mexico in a couple of months. Or, as we say, espero verte en Mexico en un par de meses. So let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Girl, you have got to try this Laneige lip mask. Trust me, my lips needed that love. Love these vanilla vibes from Kayali. That top note is just so smooth. Smooth and stunning. That's what you get with this K18 hair mask.
Those brands everybody's talking about, they're at Sephora. Discover the hype with the hottest names in beauty, including Laneige, Kayali, K18, and Rare Beauty. Only at Sephora.
All right, we're back, and I have a story to bring y'all, an unexpected piece of news from UW-Madison's campus. Well, it surprised me. I'm sure it surprised many. The chief diversity officer for the university, Dr. LeVar Charleston, was removed from his role effective immediately following an internal audit of his division's finances. So that division being the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Educational Achievement, DDEEA, for which Charleston led for the past 3 years. So according to a statement from the university on Wednesday, there will be a change in leadership. Provost Charles Isbell, who is the number 2 position at the university after the chancellor, and who you might have heard on this podcast as he is a leader in making UW the center of the AI revolution, he is stepping in as acting director of that division, effective immediately until an interim director's appointment. So it's kind of a wide-eye moment, not just because there's alleged financial mismanagement in the UW department, but specifically because it's around DEI. And of course, this is stemming from an internal audit that was a state Republican request for the Legislative Audit Bureau to examine spending on DEI across state agencies. So we'll get into that more, but I just want to share what we know so far. Right away, I'm going to say this is a developing story. So there are nuances and details that we just don't know yet, like what exactly was the financial mismanagement or areas of concern. But from the statement around Chancellor Mnuchin and Provost Isbell's announcement that you can read online, it says, quote, an ongoing internal review of DDEEA's finances has revealed areas of concern about financial operations and fiscal judgments in the division. So Charleston will be returning to his prior position as a clinical professor in the School of Education's Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis. And, you know, this change in leadership doesn't amount to any criminal charges, but it's obviously a demotion. And in addition to the leadership change, fiscal authority for this division has been moved to the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration. Man, universities have really long titles for everything. So, but all I can say is ruh-roh. Reactions?
Yeah, it's a big old yikes from me. Like, what was going on? How long was it going on? We need details. We really need details. Who's putting in the records request? Because, like, that's where this information is going to come out, right? This is not a good look for the university, but also that's to say, I mean, there were several state legislators who commended Mnuchin on her swift actions the other day when all of this announcement came out, because this is, again, it's not a good look for the university. So I think she did needed to take kind of swift and big actions. Yeah. But the fact that it's coming out of a, you know, kind of like DEI sector is also kind of hazy. I don't know. It's just like, is it fully mismanagement and it just happened to be part of this like DEI, or is like, are there bigger motives here? I don't know. I don't want to necessarily allude to that because, you know, I don't want to make assumptions here about anything, but we are coming in a place where DEI has been on the chopping block, both nationally and at the state level. So it's just, it's not a good look for anyone in any of these positions.
Yeah.
It's also, I think you sort of alluded to this, but it is part of a Republican requested audit, which isn't necessarily happening to other departments across the UW-Madison system. And so I wonder if, compared to other departments, how stark the mismanagement is. And maybe it's a systemic thing that the DEI office is really getting slammed on.
Right. Like, are the magnifying glasses coming out just for DEI?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So this office and this division has had a ton of outside scrutiny, and nothing happens in a vacuum, as you're saying, Hayley. Like, this is news that's very specific, that a division found what sounds like fiscal mismanagement somewhere. That doesn't even mean that it's coming from the top or from the person that was removed, but somewhere there is mismanagement. And that's a very specific story. But it's happening while there's so much scrutiny on DEI at the university and in the state. So, of course, just really quickly, the backdrop of the past few years, just a very public battle between Republican state legislators and UW around funding any DEI programming and staff. As you mentioned already, Republican lawmakers have commended Mnuchin's actions, and some lawmakers weighing in questioning the position entirely and its value. So that's not really surprising considering the DEI detractors on the state level really went for UW-Madison's DEI programming in 2023, and they won a lot of concessions. So the state's got the purse strings for a public university system, and they were holding up tens of thousands of employee raises, and then UW struck a deal with them, agreeing to restructure DEI roles and freeze any DEI hiring until 2026. And Voss said that, went to social media and vowed to eradicate DEI practices from UW. So it's hard to be like, okay, there's a big change in DEI at UW, and we're seeing Republican lawmakers laud the action of the chancellor. So, it's hard, not to see those things next to each other. And hey, we've been talking about the new presidency. President Trump at the federal level just signed an executive order this week placing all DEI federal employees on paid leave and forcing federal agencies to make plans to lay those employees off. So there is a broader movement to remove DEI in general. So there's, some fear that this is stoked up for sure. I will say, in the message or the statement from the university, they say that this change in leadership will not impact or have any direct impact on student, staff, and faculty who are served by and affiliated to the DDEA programs, and that they're still, unequivocally committed to inclusive excellence at UW-Madison. This raises a lot of questions, and we don't have all the answers, but something went wrong, and it just seems like a continued line of losses for folks who are hoping to bolster or at least support DEI at the university.
It's wild to me that legislators get such a bee in their bonnet over things like DEI when there are real issues happening on campus. Can we talk about sexual assault? Can we talk about something that is actively bad that's going on? I don't know. That could be a whole podcast in itself, but it just, it really grinds my gears, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And we invited Dr. Charleston on the podcast and reached out multiple times, never heard back. All the time having the awareness that this office and department is just under major scrutiny, and going on media interviews might jeopardize their work. So we never even got a chance to talk to them in this role. So the future of DEI at the university, what that looks like, it continues to be a question, at least from us looking in from the outside.
Well, maybe he's got time for an interview now.
Yeah, that's, woo!
Is that too mean?
That's true. Come on through. He's still at the university, as a note. So, yeah. But hey, we're going to move away from university politics to some news that we have all felt this week, for sure. At times, sub-zero temps. So before we get into that, let's take a quick break.
Build your fits of the day with Abercrombie's newest denim drop. I'll tell you where to start. Abercrombie's 90s straight jean goes with any shirt from tees to sweater polos. Super versatile. Their loose and baggy jeans are more trend forward, so I grab those when I go out with friends. Right now, get 25% off on almost everything at Abercrombie. Offers valid in stores and online January 23rd, 2025 to January 28th, 2025. In U.S. and Canada, exclusions apply as indicated. Online price reflects discount.
Be honest. When's the last time you had a homemade meal? We get it. Between meetings, workout classes, and the kids' after-school sports, who's got time to cook? That's where HelloFresh comes in. No matter how busy you get, HelloFresh has everything you need to get an easy, home-cooked meal on the table. With flavor-packed recipes like Parmesan herb-crusted salmon, you'll be filling your kitchen with the cozy aromas of a homemade meal in no time. So go ahead, try HelloFresh. It's homemade, made easy. Learn more at HelloFresh.com.
All right, we're still freezing our buns off. Hayley, you've got the words on this.
Yeah, in case you guys missed it, it's like really freaking cold outside. And I did miss it for a little while. As you guys know, I spent last weekend in Miami living a life blissfully unaware of the weather that was going on in the Midwest until multiple friends felt it was incumbent upon them to send me screenshots of the weather that I would be returning to on the day that I was traveling home. And all the words I saw were just dangerous, wind chill, and frostbite imminent. And I quickly snapped back to the reality that we live in a frozen tundra. And in case you somehow missed it, this week temperatures fell to minus 15 degrees. That's below zero. And that's with wind chills that were in the negative 30 to 35 degree range, which is, needless to say, dangerously cold. The National Weather Service put out a cold weather advisory that ran through Wednesday. So we're really not messing around here. And these cold temps disrupted daily life for some Madisonians. Schools in Madison, DeForest, McFarland, Middleton Cross Plains, Monona Grove, Sun Prairie, Verona, and Waunakee all closed on Tuesday because of the weather. And it also delayed some trash and recycling pickups for folks as well. So yeah, it's no joke out here. Did you guys venture outside at all? Did you guys decide to? No, you hibernated?
Tuesday was a friend's birthday, so we had to go to trivia, but it was a cold walk from my car to the trivia spot.
Yeah. There was a little bit. I've got like a newer car, but even then, like, turning it on, there was a moment where I was like, I'm not sure if we're going to make it here. It's cold. And, of course, while the cold weather affects everyone, it can be particularly dangerous for all of our unhoused neighbors here in Madison. Dane County went on to issue an emergency weather night from January 17th through the 23rd, which opened up shelters for folks to get out of the cold. So this is, opening homeless shelters for people, whether or not they've had issues in the shelters in the past. They said, it's too cold for you to be outside. Like, you can come in here. But for a lot of unhoused folks, many people opt to stay in their car versus going to a shelter despite the weather. And this is because shelters, especially when it's cold, can be really intimidating places. We're talking about hundreds of people in one spot, crowded together. There's really no privacy. In a lot of cases, if folks have pets or animals, like, they're not allowed to come inside. They're split up by gender, so families get split up. So it can be a really scary situation. And that's, again, like, why people opt to stay in their cars or stay in places where they know they can be with their family or be with their animals. Thankfully, the nonprofit organization Friends of the State Street Family were out earlier this week in the frigid cold, checking in on folks who opted to stay in their cars. And they dropped off supplies like blankets and clothes and gas cards. And it's just, that small action is one of the things that, like, you can directly do in your community when the weather is bad. And that's both in extreme cold and in extreme heat. Check in on each other, especially your elderly neighbors, folks with disabilities, unhoused people. Like, it is really just incumbent upon us to do the work here. And these folks are doing a lot of great work directly in our community, and they're always in need of donations, whether it be monetary or something from their online wish list. And we'll definitely be throwing a link in our show notes for anyone who's interested in learning more about the Friends of the State Street Family group. And speaking of donations, News 3 Now, the local news channel, is partnering with the Society of St. Vincent de Paul for its annual blanket drive that runs this weekend. So if you're looking to take action and you've got an extra blanket around the house, listen up. This Saturday and Sunday, January 25th and 26th, you can drop off new and gently used blankets, bedding, and sheets at St. Vinny's thrift stores across Dane County, as well as some other participating churches, businesses, and other organizations. And we'll include a link with more information to the drive in our show notes as well. So this is just, again, kind of an easy, low-lift way for folks to give back in the community if they're looking for it. And to me, it's just really nice to know that even in the coldest of times, our community can come together and share warmth that comes from the heart, which I think is nice.
Yeah, I appreciate this reminder, Hayley. I had seen the blanket drive a couple weeks ago and know that I have a lot of blankets that are just like in a box that I never unpacked when I moved. So I'll get those out, get them washed, and drop them off to St. Vinny's.
Yeah, as someone who's literally sitting right now with a blanket over me, I love hearing about this and seeing this, and we'll try and look for some blankets to give because, yeah, it feels very intimate and caring and just like love. It just seems so loving.
Yeah. And it goes to a good cause, and a lot of these blankets, they're used by kids, right? And it's just important that they have this safety and comfort of literally being wrapped up in a nice, cozy blanket.
Yes.
Out with the old, in with the new. If you've got a nice blanket that you've been itching to replace, go for it. Treat yourself, treat your community, all for a good cause.
Yes. Not itchy blankets, though. You keep your itchy blankets.
Yeah.
I was worried on Tuesday when schools were closed that there were a number of kids who were, not going to the warmth of school. And I think this is a small way that we can get into people's lives with warmth.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Sharing the abundance. And speaking of love and love in our community, I've got an exciting last story to kick off our Friday News Roundup. The 2025 James Beard semifinalists are in, and we've got some beloved local talent in the running for Best Chef of Midwest. Drumroll, please. Our girl, Jamie Brown Sukasume and Chucky Brown Sukasume, chefs of Ahan on Williamson Street. Woo! Congratulations, y'all.
Well deserved.
So well deserved. Such a special spot. And they've been crushing it. You may have heard our interview with Jamie on the podcast. If you want to go back and listen, definitely recommend that. But yeah, for those of y'all who have been following Ahan's journey, they moved from that little teeny location over in the Burr Oak to their spot now on Williamson Street. And they've just been crushing it, which was the former El Dorado Grill. But yeah, congratulations to them. And love to see representation in the James Beard Awards.
I was just there on Saturday. They had an hour wait, but the food was still amazing.
I love it. I was going to say, yeah, do you guys have a favorite dish from Ahan?
Well, speaking of cold, the Tom Kha, their soup,
yes,
so good, so creamy, so flavorful.
Tom Kha's always a go-to. I'm trying to figure out what the name is, but they've got this appetizer that's fried rice. And
oh my God, yes.
The cow Todd.
The cow Todd.
That's literally my favorite. Yeah, that is one of my favorite dishes in Madison. It's like one of my favorite appetizers in Madison. Like there's
its
something...
own meal.
It literally, there's something about those fried rice balls with imitation crab in them. Like it just, it does it for me every single time. Signed, sealed, delivered. I'm having a good day if I'm having cow Todd.
I love it. Yeah. Well, so congratulations to them. And man, it's a pretty big week, and I appreciate you guys rounding up the news with me. Hayley Sperling, thanks so much.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Jade Iseri-Ramos, à tout à l'heure.
Cozy up.
That's all for today here on City Cast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, your host. We're produced by Jade Iseri-Ramos, Adam Sage, and Francisco Kilgore. Hayley Sperling is our executive producer. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. Rob Thomas is our newsletter editor. Don't forget, you can always get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. And hey, if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with someone who cares deeply about their neighbors? See you back here Monday morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, take good care.